You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. My name is John Harris. I'm the producer of the show. Our host, Alan Weitz, is on vacation this week, so we brought in Todd Vorenkamp to be our co-host. We have with us Gabe Biederman from the B&H Road Marketing Team. He is a photographer, of course, and the author of the book Night Photography, From Snapshots to Great Shots.
It's a good book.
It is a great book, yeah. Welcome, Gabe.
How you doing? I'm here.
Hey, Gabe. And today's subject, fittingly, is G.A.S, Gear Acquisition Syndrome, and why you don't need a new camera. But really, why digital cameras are updated so frequently, whereas in the era of film, which I guess we're still in to some degree, that didn't happen so much. And Todd, I'm going to throw it to you with some of your facts and figures.
Sure. So I looked up things on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And
is that what that's for?
What did the World Wide Web tell us?
It told us everything that was true. So I'll use the Nikon line to start because they have a fairly logical numbering system for their cameras. And if you go back to the film days of Nikon, back to the Nikon F, which was their first SLR, professional camera, that came out in 1959. And then if you wanted the next awesome professional Nikon SLR, you waited 13 years for the Nikon F2 to show up. After that, they went on an 8-year cycle. So 8 years between the F2 and F3, which was 1980, 8 years to the F4 in 88, 8 years to the F5 in 96, 8 years to the F6 in 2004, and now we're 11 years and counting, waiting for an F7, which may or may not ever.
You'll keep on waiting for that one.
Right. And then on the digital side, the digital SLRs, the D1 came out in 1999. 4 years later, the D2. 4 years later, the D3. And then 4 years later, the D4. So if you look at that schedule, the D5 should arrive sometime this year. And we've talked, 4 years is, for a digital camera, is a pretty
long time.
It's a good lifespan compared to other models from Nikon and things like that. So 4 years, I'll buy it.
Yeah, and again, these are the top of the line pro
those
models.
are pro.
Yeah.
Those should be only pro-only cameras, really. Those are people who should be making money.
Right.
These guys are using their cameras every day. They're beating them up probably. And so 4 years, yeah. I mean,
and then
well, they also had the S's in between with the threes, so that's
they do like
which was a half
the evolutionary upgrades, I guess, or the and then on the other side, Canon came out with their 1D in 2001. The 1DS came out a year later, and then when you look at the 1D Mark II, 3, 4, and then the 1DX, you're looking at about a 3-year cycle from Canon, which is a little bit shorter, but still not hugely objectionable.
So, and they're due too. Well, I would think, right? Yeah,
they are. The 1DX was 2012, so
this could be a very gassy year.
Yeah,
could be for pro shooters.
Yeah, but as we just mentioned, these are pro cameras, they're top of the line, and I think that the subject, or at least the core of the subject, leans more toward the consumer cameras.
Right.
And I think, or at least I feel that that is what we're talking about here, basically. We're talking about consumer cycles. We're talking about ways to get the average shooter to buy more stuff. And we're going to talk about the positives of the upgrades as well. But in general, these cameras are spun out every year just to sell more stuff.
Right. I guess that's a fair assessment. When you're not talking about pro bodies, look at the prosumer Canon line that started with the 10D, 20D, all the way up to 70 now. The 10D came out, and then came out in 2003. 5 years later, the 50D was out. So that was one camera a year. 5 prosumer cameras in 5 years. Now we're up to 70D. And the paint's still wet on the 60D, and people, it's the same thing. Other companies run probably like a 2.5 year cycle on their flagship cameras. And the question for the consumer is, do I chase this? Do I keep buying the new one, or do I take a break and ignore the hands-on review on the B&H website, ignore all the buzz on the internet about how great the new one is?
Right.
It's a tough call. I don't know.
Also, I guess, there are some of those cameras along the lines that people really say, wow, that was the good one. Right. The one they made afterward, not so much. And, that's arguable, but I think that it's a good point of discussion for today. And as well as I have on my little list here that we're going to talk about the ruggedness of film cameras versus digital cameras. Needless to say, the technological advances that have happened in the past 10 years are amazing. So there's legitimate reason for some of these upgrades, many of these upgrades. And as we mentioned already, consumer cycles, marketing strategies, electronic waste, profit margins. And then we're going to get into our favorite subject, which is rumor sites and fanboys, and how that has an impact on what's going on. So, Gabe, we've let you sit here silently for too long. Anything you want to throw in at this point?
Well, I think that cameras now are very much like computers, right? And it's funny, I was just at I was in, Birmingham, Alabama, and I went to the Sloss factory, and the Sloss factory was an old, factory that was they have huge engineering feats. They have all and I'm talking to the guy on the tour, and he's like, yeah, when they have these, when they were figuring out how to turn this, how to do this, it was build something bigger, make something more mechanical, and that was in the 30s, 40s, 50s. You just built big things to get big work done. Obviously, with the advent of computers, we could now shrink down the processing of so many things. And that's sort of what's happened with the film to digital eras. Now we've gone from sort of these cameras, these machines that only really had X amount of moving parts and not many.
Right.
To now we have a circuit board.
Yeah.
Right. And so many things can go wrong, and so many things can get updated on that.
That's a good point too. Many things do go wrong, and when you break something as intricate as that, the whole thing's done. I mean, how many camera repair shops are left in New York City?
Not many. I've got a nice camera, classic camera collection. It's funny. I went to Amsterdam once, and I'm known as a bit of a clumsy guy. I open up I'm at a cafe in Amsterdam, and I open up my camera bag, and I'm right by this ledge that goes down to the next level. And somehow 2 of my cameras got hooked onto the mesh of the top of the bag. And as I open up the flap, 2 cameras go down to the next level. One of them was the Olympus C5050, which was a fantastic point and shoot digital camera. And the other one was a Contax 2 from 1954.
Wow.
Olympus goes down, splits into about 50 million pieces. Contax takes a chunk of wood out of the floor. Still operating. The rangefinder was a little off on it. I had to get that recalibrated. I was still able to use that.
Right. That's the
during
issue
the
right
trip.
there. Yeah.
I was still able to use that on the trip. I felt bad about the wood going out of the floor, but the other camera I had to bring back in several pieces and never got to shoot it again.
Which is another good point, because you could damage a film camera and still use it.
Right.
I mean,
to a certain extent.
To a certain extent. And not so much with digital. I mean, if something, you can, and I have.
Right.
But, when things go wrong, they go wrong.
Yeah.
You got to replace.
The mechanicals in a lot of these digital cameras are as good as their film counterparts. But the problem is when something gets fried in the brain, you're done. You're like,
Yep.
Well, I was telling you the other day about all the G series Canon point and shoots that I had in the 2000s, the early 2000s, and I would go through about one a year, because I would bump, the lens would extend, which would also would activate the camera as well. And as soon as that lens I would bump it, it would throw it off a little bit. It couldn't extend or retract.
Right.
And the camera wouldn't go on and off, and it was done. Focusing was done. Everything was done. And there goes my camera. And at the time, what did they cost? $500-$600. That's a lot of money.
That was, that was and still is a lot of money.
It is still a lot of money. Yeah, exactly. And
maybe not for John.
well, now that I got this gig,
One thing, I took some notes on what drives the turnover on digital cameras. Film cameras, the driving force, what caused the next one to come out was advances in motor drive, advances, once autofocus came out, advances in autofocus technology, and metering. And honestly, metering hasn't improved so much, I don't think. Companies might argue that, but matrix metering used to be 5 segment, now it's 3,000 segment. But, the averages are still working out to about the same. It's not like we were misexposing images before. But when you switch to digital, the megapixel race is probably the biggest driver on new cameras coming out. The thing that's caught up, the megapixel race for all intents and purposes, it has kind of plateaued.
Right, it stalled for a little while, and then
Now it's
now Canon picked it back up, and
it'll be interesting to see
Sony
if
picked
anybody
it up.
wants to follow that, or if they're going to wait for a while to see if people actually buy the
think
new
that's a good
5DR or
question,
5DS.
yeah.
But you'll see the biggest improvement, the thing that keeps recycling these, or not recycling, but I think what drives this is processor speed.
Right. So that's that is the one thing you always, and I always look for in the gear reviews is what's the new, is a new processor? What are the ISOs capable of? I'm not so concerned about megapixels because I know how big I'm going to be printing for the most part. I'm not having to worry about, billboards or anything
What do you
like
mean?
that.
What do you what's this this printing business?
What's this? Well, we'll
I
get
think,
to that.
I think
because
most people just like to get as many megapixels as they can so they can zoom in on their computer screen.
But
We could go way
no,
off on
ahead.
a tangent.
But so those are the two things that I'm looking for is, hey, are they using a new processor? Because that's going to improve everything. And some of these cameras are even using quad processors. So that's even, that they can act a lot more efficient. Those are two of the key things. But we are also seeing vast improvements to other things that they're doing, but they're very peripheral. And I travel for B&H and go to lots of events, and I speak to a lot of people, and everyone's asking me, what's the best camera? And I think if you've ever worked at B&H or any sort of retail store, you know that. What's the best this? What's the best that? And I like, look, I can't tell you that. Right. Tell me what your needs are. Tell me what you are doing, and I'll try to figure out something. But you won't know until you get it into your hands.
And then they give you that look of like, come on, dude.
Come on.
Tell me. Just tell me.
Let's rewind for a second. We talk about processors and say what's better. Like, tell us what is better about the 5 processor over the 6 or the 4 over
the digit 5, digit 6.
Yeah, or the X speed, or everybody has their own clever names for these processors. But
right. Well, it's that the camera can be more efficient, whether it's going to be more frames per second that you're going to get, whether it's going to be
longer buffer,
longer exposures, cleaner, longer exposures, or better, higher ISOs. Those are usually the 3 things. It is a computer these days, so it is doing about 10,000 things that we don't even know about.
Yeah.
It's weird how speed is definitely an issue. We're looking at cameras that, on an SLR, it's how fast the mirror can move these days. Back in the days of film, you had film advance, so 4 frames a second, 3 frames a second, that was blistering fast.
Yeah.
And now people are like, oh, that's only 10 frames a second? that's not good enough for me.
10 frames a second?
Yeah.
2.5 seconds, you're out of film.
Yeah, right? Yeah, exactly. I mean, you not only out of film, but you probably ripped it out of the roll because it was going so fast.
So some of these upgrades, though, each upgrade doesn't always contain a new processor, and that's something that you really got to take a look at.
It is.
Right?
I try to treat the cameras a little bit personally like our phones these days. I definitely don't try to buy the next one, because then we're just going to get stuck in this hole, right? This gas hole.
I have this strange opposition to odd numbers, so I only had even numbered phones until the latest generation came out. I won't mention the brand, but I went back and got an odd number one because I didn't like the new one.
Okay.
But that was how I paced myself.
All right.
No, and it's if you could at least skip one generation,
right?
I think you're doing a little bit justice to the to the massive electronic waste that we're we're laying, because as film people, we were holding on to them, I think, and passing them down to generations.
Absolutely.
I mean, I gave my sister my first Pentax K1000, still being used. Actually, it's being used less. I should ask her back for it because I miss that camera. But now, the moment the newest camera comes out, your camera plummets in value.
Yeah.
When you talk about price points and the prosumer and consumer camera, digital cameras are cheaper than they used to be.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it's like a throwaway mentality where you got a new camera every year, every 2 years, and you just chuck the other one. These are still 4-figure cameras. Like you can't buy. I remember when I was shooting film, the Nikon N90 I think came out, and it was maybe $450. I was like, whoa, that's a lot of money to spend on a camera. I don't know if I'm ready to make that technological leap.
I own that one too. That was
you still have it?
I did.
Plugs into your Sharp organizer.
I sold that one. I got out quick on that one.
But now people are buying cameras that cost as much as a used car.
I'm blown away. Yeah.
And then
I always refer to the Highline because I walk the Highline, and I just look at the cameras that people have.
Right.
And I don't think I'm jealous, but I'm like, how does this guy? I kind of make my living with a camera. how come this guy has such better stuff than me? You know, and that guy too, and this guy, and that guy over there, and this guy. And I mean, they were talking thousands of dollars for a vacation shooter, mostly. I mean, or, you know.
Are they getting better photos?
Better than me, probably.
Speaking of nice gear, let me talk about Leica. It's an old camera company. They've been around forever. They're certainly established by this point.
I'd say so. Yeah.
But the gaps between their cameras illustrates a lot of what we're talking about.
Right.
And when you go back, 1958 is when the M2 and M3 came out. 9 years later, the M4. 4 years later, which was a digital refresh, the M5 came out in 71. And then it was 13 years before the M6 arrived. And then the big jump, M6 to M7, not technologically a big jump, but the largest gap, 1984 to 2002, 18 years.
Right.
If you bought an M6 in 1984 and had a baby, he was going off to college, or she was going off to college before you could buy the next best thing from Leica, which is pretty amazing to think about. Like, that's a long wait.
Well, they had their M6 TTL, which for them, that they finally introduced TTL. You know, so and that sort of was boy, you couldn't get any better than that, and that's sort of what held it for them, I think, for so long. But you know, I think we were talking about it yesterday, and the M4 to M5 was a quick jump, but the M5 was a clunker of a camera. It was a totally redesigned. It was the biggest. It was like the tallest camera.
There go the M5 sales from B&H.
Exactly.
Way to go, Gabe.
Well, there weren't many. There weren't many of them. Actually, if you have one now, you're probably don't use it. Just hold on to
collect it, yeah.
because it was just big and clunky. And actually, you know, 4 or 5 years after that, they actually came out with the M4P, I believe it was, and that sort of was okay. So they actually went back,
Right.
you know, because they were like, okay, we made a big mistake here, trying to, you know, it's funny. Leica really has had the same body. What have they added to it? They've kind of, it's little touches. It's like actually in between each model, it was like a TTL. It was a half refresh. It was actually offering different sight lines, different viewfinders for it. Once we've got into the M series, but boy, when they tried, it was a major revolt in the Leica world when they went to the M5 and they quickly went back to the old molds. and rushed out probably one of their most classic designs, the M4P, and that lasted a while till the M6.
Right. Which is,
you know, that reminds me, because I think like the F4, the Nikon you were talking about before, they continued making that after they made other, you know, that F5 and whatnot. So I mean, it was such a popular, successful camera that. Does that happen now? I mean,
not so much. I think Galen Rowell probably is responsible for that, but the late Galen Rowell, because he was an F4 user. The F5 came out, and he went out publicly and said, "I don't like the F5. I like the F4." And that probably, as much as anything, probably. I'm totally speculating on that.
But it was a great camera.
He
that
was
everybody used,
the
right?
Nikon guy, and without his
the
endorsement,
F4
the F5 was kind of
right. He was the F4 had a nice following. I never owned one. But I definitely would read a ton about it. And people were just because that was also the first real autofocus camera from Nikon. And some say they've really, everything has gotten sort of bigger and clunkier and since then.
It was kind of like an F3 with a little more tech built into it. It had all the great features of the F3, had that utilitarian rugged look, but it had autofocus and matrix metering, all that stuff. Which the F3 had, but not actually. The F3 was probably more center weighted only, right?
Yeah, that wasn't matrix. Yeah.
So,
well, this is something that I just wanted to mention, and then we're going to jump ahead. But you talked about the 18-year difference in passing on the cameras, and so did Gabe. And I talked to a lot of photographers, you know, top of the line pro guys, and they can all remember their first analog camera, their first film camera. Oftentimes, something that was given to them by their father or their mother. And they started shooting with it, and they loved it. And many times they keep it. But then I asked them, well, what was your first digital camera or your, you know, and they don't remember. You know, they're like, I don't know. You know, you spin through them so fast. There's not that emotional attachment somewhat.
Right.
I
There's
mean,
no fondness for it. I don't ever wake up in the morning and go like, oh, I miss my D100. I really wish I could go out and shoot with it. You know, like you never say that.
God, please, no. Thank goodness. I have to sit next to this guy.
Right.
All right.
So, I think they are trying now with the retro look with a lot of the mirrorless cameras. You're seeing is that now they definitely look better. I really appreciate what a lot of these companies are doing by actually thinking outside of the box and building something from the ground up, right? Instead of just using the same chassis that we've been maybe using since the film days,
Right.
and ripped out the film innards and stuffed it with
Right.
digital innards. So, but
whole-
it's funny that the building from ground up, but still making it look something from the 60s or 70s.
Yeah. Well, then we're going to talk about your Samsung here, which as a mirror NX1, which as a mirrorless though is kind of evolving back to look just like a DSLR.
Right.
Which
Yep.
It's much closer in size to a regular DSLR than I say traditional mirrorless camera, even though traditional is not the right term because mirrorless only been out for a few years. But it bridges the gap in some ways. It's kind of, I like something substantial in my hand, and the mirrorless is too small and too light for me. So
Yeah, it's got a nice grip to it.
But one thing about the Samsung is something I'd like to see in more cameras is firmware updates. DP Review just did their review of the Samsung, which the camera came out last year, and DP Review is usually faster. But if you read all the way through the review, they say, why wasn't this reviewed earlier? And they said basically it's because so many firmware upgrades have come up that they were waiting and waiting until they got to a point where they felt they could write about the actual camera that was in their hands. And that it might be annoying in a sense that you're not getting the best product right out of the box.
Right.
But the fact that those companies are spending time to upgrade the thing you've already bought, so you don't need to get the next thing, is what's impressive to me.
Yeah.
I think that's what the next on our list here. And I wanted to mention, and we've been kind of, I guess, trashing the news cycle and digital cameras to some degree here. But the point is, in the past 10 years, the advances have been incredible. And they validate the fact that a new camera should come out almost every year, every 2 years, because of the advances that have been made. And who's going to deny that? And then the second thing I wanted to bring up is what you just did, which is firmware. And I wonder how that's going to change things now that firmware is kind of an established part of your new camera. How's that going to change it? Are we going to be holding on to this NX1 for the next 10 years with just firmware updates, or
I think it just makes it go to that 3 to 4 year cycle. Get there, and you're a little bit happier about it. I mean, I own the X Pro 1 by Fuji, and I obviously love the look. I love the image quality that came out, but the focusing was frustrating. But
Diplomatic.
exactly. But there has been not at once a month, but they usually do a firmware upgrade. Fuji's been great too. Every 3-4 months, and they're doing things like making your shutter speed go higher by using a firmware upgrade. You can add an electronic shutter speed. So now you can get up to past 8,000ths of a second or something like that, and so that's pretty, what they can do with the firmware upgrade is pretty fascinating. But obviously right out of the box is you can obviously improve image quality because you can improve the algorithms that are being written. You can improve focusing speed and tracking. The next firmware upgrade for the Fuji X-T1 is supposed to be monumental, and that's going to make tracking focus even better. That was one of the main things for it.
Right. And when the X Pro 1 come out?
3 years ago.
3 years ago. So there's people at Fuji that love this camera and are making it better for everyone that bought it. And
that also
that's
shows
a cool thing.
They're listening.
Right.
That tells me that Samsung, Fuji, and these companies that put out consistent firmware upgrades, that they're listening to the feedback and they're trying to give you a better product. I don't see as much, I mean, I remember what the 5D Mark III, I think, when they made that massive audio firmware upgrade where you can now do different audio. That was like, wow, you had a brand new thing. But you don't hear so much. I mean, Nikon can probably do one firmware upgrade, maybe two for their cycle of it. I don't hear about it as much as with, again, some of these mirrorless ones, which maybe they're vying for more attention, to get that piece of the pie. But hey, if you're going to listen to the consumer, that's good in my book, and
I think that's
to strive to
I think
make a
that's
better
the
product.
I think that's the core of the firmware updates, because when I've talked to company reps, it's always like, we've listened to what our customers say, and that's why we have these firmware upgrades. I doubt there's somebody at Nikon right now working on a firmware upgrade for my D300. They're probably there's probably a few D300s in a closet there. That's still the current. That is the last prosumer DX camera from Nikon, and that came out. When was that? 2004.
Well, the other side of that is if the firmware is updated, but the plastic body on your camera has cracked and the guts are spilling out.
Yes.
How good is it?
I mentioned before, I have like about 40 classic cameras. Every couple of years, I need to get maybe something calibrated or something like that. But the key component with all these cameras was they had to be working, because I wanted to spend time with each one. And I used to go. There's so many repair places. in New York City.
Yeah.
And there's not as many anymore. And then when you go in, they're just like, okay, it's going to be actually more to repair this than for you to get the next version of it.
Or we'll send it back to Nikon and we'll charge you.
Just for the record, the Nikon D300 came out in 2007.
Okay.
And it was discontinued in 2009.
Oh, so it is
It
discontinued.
was replaced by the S,
Yes.
which ran for a couple years, and then, but
that hasn't been.
2007. That was, what's the math on that? 8 years ago. Yep, that was quick math, huh?
Yeah,
impressive.
I was checking some used prices for the D300, some Nikon cameras, and you can buy one now for $400 a body.
I
Which
bought
was
a second
1400.
body a couple years ago just to have a backup.
So the D300S is still not. You can't get that at B&H now.
Not new. No.
Not new. Okay.
All right. We've touched on a lot of the subjects here. One thing we haven't touched on is the realm of rumor sites and fanboys.
I've been waiting for this.
I've been waiting for this because we live in this, or we work in this bubble, and there's a review of every possible camera, and there's 20 reviews. It's crazy.
There's 20 reviews, and then there's comments following each review.
Right. And I'm wondering how much this is driving the industry, or not.
I think there are a group of people that don't care, and they walk in the store and it's all new and fresh to them. And there's others that spend weeks doing internet research. I'll go back to 1996 in the Wayback Machine when I was researching my first SLR. There was no internet, so you picked up Popular Photography, and maybe you could find a camera review in another magazine. I can't remember back then what was on the bookshelf, but you could go through that in an afternoon and make a purchasing decision. Now you can be lost for hours.
You get lost. Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
And everybody's got an opinion, and everybody has the ability to share that opinion online. So you can't. There's a lot of noise out there, and the bottom line is every digital camera since 2000 takes really good pictures.
Well, I think we saw a massive improvement, in the early 2000s when we shifted from CCD to CMOS sensors.
Right.
There was a massive, of shifting of image
Bring it.
quality. But now the upgrades are more incremental. It's more of a brush and wash, or something that's happening where you get you get that not that. It's the 4A processor, not from 4 to 5, but the 4A
Version
processor.
2.12.
So I think again you can wait at least a generation. And here's the thing I would like to say is actually take that money and invest in good glass.
Yeah,
because glass is still the same, and it's still glass is what lasts a lifetime.
right.
And to what I think, at least glass should be lasting 10, 20 years. You could be passing that down. And if you take the time and invest in good glass, then you're going to, your image quality is definitely going to skyrocket. And then whether you're full frame or you're APS-C or anything else like that, it doesn't matter. You got good glass in the front. Most digital cameras are up to par for it. And
a lot of you say that that's an incredibly good point, because a lot of these D7200 users that maybe made the jump from the 7100 to the 7200. What I say jump, it was probably more of a stumble or a half step. Well, they're putting that same kit lens on the new camera. Instead, they could have put that $2,000 towards a professional lens and seen an exponential increase in image quality on the same body.
Yep.
And then save up for the next generation. That's great advice, Gabe.
So I was thinking about G.A.S. For a while, and
I don't know if did we define it as gear at the beginning.
I don't know. You want to define it now?
Please go.
Gear acquisition syndrome. Right?
Yeah.
So here I have a cure. I have one simple cure that I want to post to all our listeners. That if you feel, and I think as humans are naturally consumers for the most part, or at least 80% of them. Maybe there's 20% out there that can bypass that and have that D1 or that XT one and then not know about anything for 10 years. And that's great. But most of us, I think we are in a consumer society. So this is what I would challenge. And I've done this challenge myself. It's a wonderful, it can even become a project, but to the listeners, I would say, take your one camera and just shoot with one lens. Do it for a month.
Right.
That'll cure you. That'll focus you, and don't read the fanboy websites, and just really focus on
Except for
on the work.
B&H.
Except for B&H, right?
Except for B&H, yeah.
Top board cap.
Right. And
That's
listen,
not a fanboy. That's the source.
That's right.
right.
Thank you.
But I think that's a good challenge that we all can take something out and help improve our vision.
Okay.
That's good advice.
Thank you, Gabe, for joining us today. And Todd, of course, thank you. Jason Tables, our wonderful engineer, thank you very much. For more photo news and reviews, check bnhphoto.com/explorer. Reach out to us on Twitter at bnhphotopodcast and email any questions you have to podcast@bnhphoto.com. And one more thing, please leave us a review on iTunes. Positive reviews sure help. Thank you.